Hello, it's Matthew here again, Matthew McKenzie, care activist, advocate. Um, do as much as I can to raise awareness of unpaid carers. That includes even writing books and doing the odd lecture. This is again from my own lived experience. I'm not a super expert in this. However, I have been known to run many online and offline care groups, and this is basically what I'm going to be talking about today. Um, if you're a care, especially a veteran one, one with a lot of lived experience, it's always worth, if you want, to try and set up your own carer group. And I'm all for carers trying to do this. To be honest, you don't really have to be someone who has cared for a relative or close friend for a long period of time. However, it's not something I would suggest if you're new to caring for someone. And let's make this really simple. The reason anyone would want to set up a carer group is that, for one thing, they've joined or used a carer group um, for a long length of time in the past, and they just want to continue to connect with other unpaid carers um, to try and develop their own network. So it's not something, if you're new to the role, you would do. You would initially try and work out what a carer group is first, like whether it's a carer support group or peer group or networking group or resource sharing group. In fact, I've done a video about many different types of care groups out there off my YouTube channel, so do look for that. I'll put it in the description anyway. So you want to set up your own care group. You've been caring for a while, some years or so, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, look, how do I go about doing this? Where do I get the resources? How do I connect to other carers? How do I build up a good user base, a good membership of carers um, that can help grow the group, that can help establish the group? There are, of course, several pitfalls to developing your own carer group. You have to think really carefully, the purpose of the group, because one thing I could mention to other carers is if you set up the wrong type of carer group, it can be really resource intensive. It can put a lot of pressure on yourself. So it's always good to try and speak to other carers and maybe if they can help out, establish the group. It'll be about around about nine sort of points I'm going to go through and provide some examples as well of again what I know, what I've picked up, spoken to others, what I've searched online. But the main thing is you just want to connect to other carers or share your experiences with other carers, a way of giving back, I would think. So, so let's start. Setting up a carer group. What's the first thing you want to do? And I've just mentioned it really. Identify the group's purpose. Now, carer groups can be very complex. There are many different types. And as a reminder, do look up on the previous video that I've done. I've put it in the description, the different types of carer groups. The most common of all carer groups will be obviously either the networking group or the peer support one. And I often suggest a networking group, to be honest. Peer support is a tricky one, very difficult to do because there'll be a lot of carers, unfortunately, will be asking a lot of you, and they might not fully understand the nature of peer support, which means it's a self-sustaining with the members. Unfortunately, my experiences with peer support is they still feel the facilitator is responsible, and I feel no, it's not really. It's everyone is responsible for that group, but you will get obviously new members who are very needy. So I always suggest if you're not sure what group, go for a care networking group. So in that way, you can set that up with different carers who who know a lot about the role and can help build that group. If you still decide you want to go for different types of groups, it always helps to identify its purpose. Think about the focus of that group, whether it's emotional support. As I said, the most common one is a care support group where you give practical advice. If you're going to go for practical advice, you've got to have a source of resources or where you're going to get those resources from. Now, I'm known for connecting with carers who are caring for someone with mental ill health or looking after someone with mental ill health. So therefore, a lot of the resources are really going to come from the mental health trust or care centres or from lived experience. It's hard to have a mixture because the problem is you're going to go for a mixture of different carer groups. You've got to think about the length of time to fit all things in. I split them up. So usually I might one group as a support group and the next one as a forum. Or you can even mix it up as the first half being engagement to what carers have been coping with. And you might do a feedback session on who's been doing what in regards to their involvement, maybe at another group or at the NHS Trust, or you might even have a speaker in the group. We'll discuss that in a fair bit. But continue on, clearly define the group's goals, such as whether it's emotional support, resources, or advocating for carers. Right, and I'll give an example. For instance, a peer group is basically, for carers of people, dementia, might focus on sharing coping strategies, which is an excellent way of setting up or making use of a carers group. A peer group is coping strategies for, how do you care for someone who's managing memory loss or behavior changes? While another group might focus on navigating the healthcare system. Again, with the navigation of healthcare systems, that's not something you may find if you're starting out in the role of caring. I'd say if you're being involved in healthcare system, then yes, do go for that example. How do you navigate the healthcare system? If you're engaging with carers who are quite new to the role and haven't a clue. So that would be really useful for carers out there. So identify the group's purpose, whether it's emotional, peer group, support group, resource sharing. And if it's that sort of situation, it could be, how do you share the coping strategies with other carers? And it's certainly most needed out there. We'll move on. So this is obviously one of the main things, really. No point having a group if you can't recruit the members. So how do you go about doing this? They're obviously more than what I'm just showing here, but these are the most basic things, word of mouth or through the networks. So you can reach out to potential members through local organizations. And when I say local organizations, I'm talking about your care centers, to be honest. And if you're really lucky, they might even maybe refer carers to you as well to make it just a bit easier. You've got hospitals. If you're going to go down that route, there's two ways. You've got your comms in your NHS Trust. You can reach out to comms. You can go through that through the PALS, which is Patient Advice Liaison Service, and ask, how can you advertise a group? And if the NHS Trust can help advertise it, your hospitals. The other way is your public and patient involvement lead. You can go through that way, and they're usually based at either mental health trusts or even your acute hospitals. You do get them there. They engage with community groups. That's part of their job. The other way, which is more tricky, is social media. The only problem with that is there's a lot of problems really. But the advantage is the big problem is social media is really intensive. You've got to be on that as much as you can. Weekly, almost daily sometimes to promote your group. The good side of it is free, basically. And I've known for other organizations that are in the business of advertising community resources like your health watches will start helping to promote your group. Again, existing community networks, and I did mention your care centers, those are your first point of call. They also want to identify carers, and if your group manages to get new carers that the centers don't know about, then there's no reason for you to not refer them back to the care center. It's a win-win, really. The only reason why they might not refer is if your group's not so established or they're a bit worried the group's not running to specific standards. But most of the time, to be honest, they want to see carers actually set up their own groups and help the care center. The advertising for the community centers and GP offices or surgeries is definitely a good thing. Again, one thing I forgot to mention is you probably will need a poster or leaflet, but with many online resources, I don't see that as a big problem. There's a lot of stuff you can do for free with little bit of technical expertise. Um, and you can go through your national organization. I don't say local, I got that wrong. That's national. Cares UK is a national Cares charity, and also missed out Cares Trust. The good thing with Cares Trust as well is they have partner organizations. So, um, let's see, you could use those again to help promote your groups further. So both Cares UK and Cares Trust is a good example of reaching out to networks. So just an example here I've put down. Um, Not the best ones. I would personally, Facebook is good. If you're going to use social media, Facebook's okay, and you can create your Facebook forums. Lock them down first. There's obviously going to be a lot of confidentiality, personal stories. There's an example of Health Unlocked to create, private groups where members can actually sign up. So do lock those groups down first because of confidentiality. And a good example again of that is if a carer is discussing about a person that they care for, and that person does sort of see that discussion, is going to cause a lot of problems as well. And you've got situations with care stigma that I'll say for another lecture, really. Moving on is the layout and format of how the group was going to run. So it could be in person. When I say in person, that means on site somewhere. Again, if you're lucky, it's going to be your care center. Most of them will do that anyway. They say, oh, good, someone's going to run a group that we don't have a specific group for. So you're basically volunteering with the support of the care center. If you're not going to go down that route, it's going to be virtual. Slightly easier in some sense because people don't have to travel, but it's not going to be the same experience. But most of the time, with virtual groups, you're going to find those who can't travel because they're caring for someone have to be in their room. Another problem about that, though, is that it does require a bit of digital literacy. So if you're going to use Zoom or Teams or Google Meets, you do have to work out obviously how it's going to run, how to protect it, how to advertise those links, those sign-in links. So think of things like that, and it can even be hybrid. I wouldn't go hybrid to be honest, but you can do it. You have to be very expert in and have a fair bit of resource as well if you're going to go hybrid. So if I were you, if you want to choose that format of how the group's going to sort of run, I personally will start perhaps online first, see how that works. And when you get a few members, you might think to yourself, how can I support the care centre or community centre? And it might be face to face, but again, you're looking at the distance of who's joining, what carers joining. Are they far out from your local area? And if that's the case, it's more likely to be online. Um, this is my personal view. If you do go online, do go for Zoom rather than MS Teams. I think Teams is massive, can do loads of stuff, very corporate, but it's also flaky in a sense. You have to get to grips with a lot of stuff with it. Zoom is just straight up. you set up your meetings and that's it really. A lot of problems. I don't think it's as secure as Microsoft Teams though. I have had a lot of problems where people have to keep trying to hack the thing. But I've also put down that if carers are far out and they've got mobility issues when caring for someone, or they have to be with that person, then yeah, um, do it online. So the example is, and this is one of the main reasons why I set up my group, which a number of them are online, is my groups became more increasingly popular during the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone were going online; they just couldn't meet up, and it's sort of stuck that way. So I've several national groups. There's no way I'm running them on site. It's just going to be too difficult for people to travel there. So it allows people to join or carers to join from different locations. So moving on to the group structure, is it going to be open or closed? I certainly would suggest closed for now. If you've spoken to other carers that you already know, but if you're new to setting up this group, the Terminal group will have either fixed membership, closed, or new members can join at any time, so it's open. A closed group can build deeper connections. They're knowing each other for a fair bit, so they know what they're in for and they can help out the group. An open group will have new ideas and fresh perspectives. The problem that though I find, if I would start off closed and then gradually open up a fair bit, because you obviously want to bring in new members. The problem I found with an open group is you'll have those who don't fully understand the rules. If even if you told them, they might have different expectations. It might be sort of disruptive. That's what I found anyway. So it's a gradual opening up of your group. Think of the size of the group as well. Limit the number of members to ensure everyone gets a chance to participate. So people think, oh, like 6 people joining my group, that's a failure. And I say, no, it's not, considering it's very difficult to have a consistent carers group. If you get 12, that's very good. That's excellent. So it's between 6 and 12. Even if you get 3, it's still good. It's still a way to engage and share ideas. So, example, we have a national mental health organization charity called Mind, and they often run closed groups for mental health carers, and then allowing participants to develop trust over time, and then they can slightly open up that group. Ground rules. I did mention if you're going to go for open care group, you will have obviously new members, but there might be situations they don't understand those rules. And if you're going to go about setting up a care group, you must, not all the time, but you must establish some rules. Otherwise, there's a free for all where people be arguing with each other. No one's going to get much of a say. Some might say the wrong thing. And there's not going to really be much of a supportive group. So I've mentioned these things, confidentiality and respect, but I didn't mention respect, but confidentiality is really important. So set clear guidelines for maintaining confidentiality, respectful communication, no shouting or arguing, mutual support within the group. It's meant to be a healing environment in some sense. Carers did go through a lot of traumatic experiences. So it's important that if there's going to be a group, it's got to help carers cope. Remember, I mentioned coping strategies. So things like that, or resource sharing. You're not going to trust, if you don't trust anyone, you're not going to share any resources, are you? So all participants should agree on these rules to foster, this is really important, I should have put it in bold, a safe environment. Otherwise, no one's going to really want to come back. If people are arguing, or it's going to put people off, going to put carers off from joining. So here's an example. Many peer groups, such as those organised, and this is another mental health charity that I've put in there, Rethink Mental Illness, they create group agreements, that outline how members will engage with one another respectfully without arguing or blaming or putting people down. And that's a common thing, unfortunately, that can happen with peer groups. Moving on to finding a facilitator or rotating the leadership. So I'm not sure I put train because if you're going to set up your own care group, it's you that's going to be facilitating most of the time. Because come to think of it, if you're a carer, it's going to be really difficult to get the resources to find a facilitator unless you are very lucky to have the support of a care centre, or if you're really skilled, the support of um, a care support officer, a mental health trust, and they would have their own groups anyway. They might drop into yours and help out every so often, but consider having a trained facilitator, especially at the beginning, to guide discussions, ensure everyone gets a chance to speak, or help navigate sensitive topics. And there will be a lot of sensitive topics. Another lecture for another day on that one, on the topics that might come up in your carer group. Alternatively, group members can actually take the facilitator role, but that's going to be, almost non-existent, because I do feel carers are just sort of trying to learn together. It can be done, but most of the time, if you're the one setting up the group, you're the one that's going to be facilitating. There might be a situation another person might help facilitate. As mentioned, and I've mentioned this a few times, peer-led. Some groups may choose a peer-led model where all members have equal responsibility. I think that's very difficult to do. But if you do go down that route, then this strategy fosters empowerment, but may need some initial facilitation to maintain the structure. And I think that's almost zero, to be honest. I've never come across a carer-led group that has a facilitator to help out to begin with, and then it might eventually go to the person that set up the group, unless it's perhaps the care center. But then they would just most of the time say either they run it or you get on with it. There's one group that I do have that's like this, actually, oddly enough, which is under the Greenwich Care Centre, where staff actually help out and I do the main bit. So it can be done, but it's with the care centre, so you do need a lot of support, and you do need to know what you're doing. It can be very tricky as well. Here's another example: as Alzheimer's Society. Now they have a fair number of peer groups for carers, and they use trained facilitators initially to help structure discussions, but later they become peer-led. But obviously, it starts with outside. There's national organisations. If it's local, it's slightly more difficult. But the other side of it is that they want carers to set up groups, because in the end, it's a win-win. You're sort of networking and reaching out and referring back to the organisation. So regular schedule. So how, think about the consistency. Is it going to be, weekly, which is highly unlikely, really is, bi-weekly or monthly, to help members plan ahead. Keeping meetings consistent builds routine and trust within the group. Most of the time, you probably will have groups, especially starting out, might be once every 2 months, bi-monthly, maybe monthly. And remember, if you're caring for someone, that might make it tricky, if their health might go downhill and you might be dragged away. So some groups meet every second Wednesday, which allows carers to plan for respite care or arrange their schedules around these sessions. So create a supportive environment, safe spaces, as I mentioned before, whether it's online or in person. It's best to create a welcome environment where members feel comfortable sharing. If there's arguments, people are not going to open up. Physical settings, choose, it could be, when I say choose neutral, like, you're not going to obviously want to do this at home unless you're in a mansion. You might want to choose a private location, and it's got to be quiet as well. I'm not giving the best examples. Library's not really quiet. They might have a room set aside. The community centres are the better way. I've done a lot of care groups at community centres. Online platforms probably one of the best for a little bit of quiet. So if you're going to go this route, think about if it's going to be a closed group, maybe remember, an online platform is different from a group, by the way. any communication is going to stay on there unless you moderate it. I've also failed to mention WhatsApp. That's probably one of the ultimate ways of carer groups, and it's very easy to do that one if you've got support in advertising and referring carers. Zoom is a great resource, offers private, secure environments. Not perfect, obviously, there are hacker problems, but it's the easiest one to do. So offering resources and information, I do this all the time, but why? Well, either I will speak about topics just like I'm doing now, or initially might have a guest speaker, or expert. So occasionally, if you're lucky, invite professionals such as healthcare workers, counselors, or legal experts. Provide valuable information on topics relevant to the group. It could be, as I've mentioned, my background's in mental health carers, so it's mental health care plans or financial support for carers. That's going to be your someone in the local authority that supports or engages carers, or your local care centre. The resource sharing aspect of it is encouraging members to share resources, because a lot of the carers that I've noticed anyway are involved in helping shape the services of their mental health trust or the acute hospital trust. So you want to encourage members to share resources with us, information about local support services, tips on self-care. Again, this is the lived experience aspect, or advice on navigating health systems. I think that comes down later on down the road, and it's probably looking into a bit more of carers' rights. So looking at the examples, peer groups organized again, I did mention carers trust often provide information leaflets, although they're cutting down a bit on the leaflets to do the environment. But if you look on their site, they've got links to resources, and you can even invite guest speakers from where. And again, if you're known to them, they can speak on specific topics that they're doing nationally for carers, and they do like to see carer groups. That's something they like to hear about. So going on to evaluate how the group's working and adapt if things need to work in a better environment. So the best way is getting feedback from the members, and regularly ask for feedback from group members to understand what's working and what needs improvement. This can help adapt the group structure, the topics, frequency of meetings based on member needs. Not easy to do this, especially if they're new carers. I've had issues with carers that can complain and can bark. Obviously, telling the rules not to do that. Um, but you do need updates, and this tends to work if they're regularly attending. If you're getting new members rotating frequently, it's not going to be easy to do that. Sometimes you have to work out yourself what you might need to change. It's all about continuous improvement. So I'll obviously use that feedback to tweak the group's formats, such as adjusting the times if need be, whether it's too late or too early in the day. Add in more focus on specific topics if carers ask for it, or even changing the leadership style of how it's facilitated, how it's run, how the care groups run. Some groups actually use surveys. Um, I think SurveyMonkey is a good one. I should have put that down there, or just check-ins. Again, a WhatsApp group can do polls on WhatsApp, get feedback also, ensuring that the group remains relevant and valuable. And to be honest, um, if you set up a group, I've run care groups for close to 9 years, so there's always a need for peer groups, support groups, resource sharing groups, networking groups. There's always a need for them. It's just whether you've got the time and the energy to do them. Encourage member engagement, and I think we're nearly done here, really. So active participation. Encourage all members to participate by sharing their lived experience or offering advice. Balanced engagement ensures that no one feels left out, which can easily happen. I've always tend to have this where someone might dominate a group about their own situations, their own problems, and sometimes it's not that, it's not that bad. Fair enough, someone's needed, might need that support, but it can't always be that way. Those people won't feel valued and they'll just drop out of the group. You can always use icebreakers, so introductions to help members feel comfortable, especially during the first few meetings. and also creating that focus for each session. So it could be a topic-based discussion. So consider having a theme for the topic. I always tend to do this, managing caregiver guilt, navigating those health services or social care services, or coping with stress. Again, good example, we think mental illness. So, with their support groups often focus on specific mental health topics, which give members a clear sense of purpose for each meeting. Not easy, this one, because I still do find technology, and I work in the field, can be tricky, but you can use it for creating that extra connection. So apps and messaging, I did mention WhatsApp or Slack to maintain communication between those meetings. And I've had several WhatsApp groups. I'm known for them. Uh, WhatsApp care groups that just help members stay connected and offer real-time support. Moderation can be tricky though. Again, if you have the know-how, the technical know-how, you can just go for the online forums. I tend not to do that much. As part of my website, Care in Mind, some groups complement in-person or virtual meetings with an online forum where members can continue discussions and share resources. Something I might do in the future. I need to think about it. So let's end up on this. So setting up a peer group, a care or peer support group, requires a fair bit of planning, a bit of flexible approach, a bit of support as well. By determining the purpose of recruiting those members, creating a structure, and offering ongoing support, you can foster a community. You should put that in bold, where unpaid carers feel supported and empowered as well. And tailoring that group structure to meet the needs of its members is essential for long-term success. One last thing I want to mention is there will be challenges and there will be problems running those groups. It shouldn't put you off. It's a way of learning from those groups. Even now, I have had absolutely awful experiences of care groups. Would it put me off? Not really, no. I think with life, if it's part of your identity, and you want to reach and connect with others, don't let those things put you off. You can actually learn from them and grow stronger. It's about networking with those who need your support, really. I like to say, if you enjoyed this video, do give me a like. If you like those lectures that I do from a lived experience point of view, feel free to subscribe. And I like to say, thanks for watching and look after yourselves.